I want you to picture a completely impossible scenario. Just close your eyes for a second. If you're in a place where you can safely do that, obviously.
Yeah, please don't do that if you're driving.
Yeah, exactly. But really try to put yourself in this specific room. You are sitting in the audience of like one of the most prestigious, world-famous concert halls on the planet.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The lighting is incredibly low. It's just this wash of deep shadows across velvet seats, and the atmosphere in the room is absolutely electric with anticipation.
You can feel the tension.
You really can. And down on the stage, bathed in a single, brilliant, almost blindingly white spotlight, is a world-famous musician.
Just him.
Just him.
Yeah.
He is completely, utterly alone. Actually, there's an actual moat of water surrounding the stage.
A moat? Really?
Yeah. It effectively isolates him. Like he's sitting on his own private, unapproachable island. And he's being watched intently by thousands of people in the room.
And probably cameras, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's being broadcast live through dozens of high-definition cameras to millions more around the globe.
So total visibility. Like absolutely no blind spots anywhere.
Exactly. Total visibility. Every single angle is covered. And suddenly, right in the middle of a frantic, sweeping piece of music, he just stops.
Uh-oh.
He drops his hands from the keys. He starts clutching frantically at his throat. His eyes get wide with absolute primal terror, and he just drops dead to the floor.
Man, that is wild.
It gets crazier. Because when the medical examiner later looks at the body, the cause of death is completely undeniable. It's manual strangulation.
Wait, someone choked him.
With their bare hands. But here is the impossible part that we have to reconcile today. No one was within 20 meters of him.
It is literally the ultimate locked room mystery. But instead of, a dusty, abandoned manor house, it is played out on a global stage.
Right. Under the brightest lights imaginable in front of millions of witnesses.
Yeah.
And that is the exact source material for our deep dive today. We are cracking open case file number 201, redacted, the Requiem of the Rain-Slicked Keys.
Such a dramatic title.
I know, right? But I want to be clear with you right up front. Our mission today is not just to play armchair detective and solve a straightforward whodunit.
Because there's nothing straightforward about this.
Exactly. The sources we've gathered for this, the crime scene reports, the deeply bizarre autopsy anomalies, the local urban legends, and an incredibly haunting confession note, they all point to something much, much bigger.
Oh, for sure. We are going to deconstruct what is essentially a masterclass in acoustic engineering.
Acoustic engineering, psychological warfare, and honestly, deep-seated generational trauma.
Because the mechanics of this event, like the sheer physics required to execute something like this in plain sight, are staggering.
Unbelievable.
It requires an understanding of materials science and acoustics that borders on the savant. But as we dig into these sources, the how almost becomes secondary to the why.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The physical impossibility of the act forces us to look at the deeply toxic psychological environment that allowed it to happen in the first place.
Okay, so I am going to challenge you right off the bat as you listen to this deep dive. I want you to act as the lead detective on this case alongside us.
Get your notepads out.
Seriously. But consider yourself warned, because the laws of physics and the boundaries of human psychology, they are going to be stretched to their absolute breaking limits today.
You're going to hear things that sound like literal magic. Like campfire ghost stories.
But our job is to ground them in reality. Because at the end of the day, if there are deep physical bruises on a man's neck, there has to be a physical cause.
Matter interacts with matter.
Exactly. A ghost doesn't leave contusions.
And that physical reality really begins with the environment itself. Before we even look at the victim, we have to look at the trap he was sitting in.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So the crime scene is this architectural marvel known as the Glass Cathedral.
The Glass Cathedral.
Yeah. And this isn't just a concert hall. It is a structure built entirely of reinforced glass and steel. And here's the kicker. It's suspended directly over a natural rushing waterfall.
Which is just a breathtaking concept for a venue. I was looking at the architectural blueprints in our sources, and the floor of the stage itself is actually transparent.
Wow.
Yeah, you look down and you see literally tons of water crashing over rocks right beneath your feet.
It's visually stunning, yes. But what's fascinating here is how that specific architectural choice manipulates human perception.
And acoustics, right.
Especially acoustics. On the night in question, the sources note there is a massive thunderstorm raging outside.
Oh, of course there is.
Naturally. So architecturally, You have the continuous, thunderous roar of a waterfall beneath the floor, and you have torrential rain hammering against a sprawling glass roof above.
Okay, let's unpack this, because you would normally think a classical concert hall wants pristine, absolute silence, right?
Usually, yes. Pin drop silence.
But the rain essentially creates this relentless natural percussion. It's a literal wall of sound.
A wall of sound, exactly.
And right in the center of that auditory chaos is our victim. His name is Julian Vane. The press basically dubbed him the Mozart of the modern age.
Quite the title to live up to.
And for this specific performance, which was, by the way, his grand debut at this venue, he is playing a custom-built crystal grand piano.
Everything is transparent.
Everything. The walls, the floor, the instrument, all of it.
The setting is meticulously designed to be a sensory overload for the audience. But fundamentally, it acts as a sensory deprivation chamber for the performer himself.
Wait, how so?
Well, think about the combination of the waterfall's low-frequency rumble, which vibrates right through those glass floorboards, and the rain's high-frequency percussion on the roof.
Okay.
It creates what acoustic engineers call masking.
Masking. So basically flooding the auditory spectrum so you can't pick out individual sounds.
Exactly that. It's broad-spectrum noise. It masks subtle, localized sounds entirely.
That's terrifying.
Julian wouldn't be able to hear anything except the notes vibrating directly through his fingers and the absolute loudest, most piercing sounds in his immediate vicinity.
Wow. So he is physically surrounded by thousands of people, but acoustically, he is trapped entirely alone in a void of white noise.
Isolated in plain sight.
That brings me back to the crystal piano, which is such a wild, ostentatious detail. When I read that, it immediately made me think of an hourglass.
Oh, an hourglass. I like that analogy.
Right. This beautifully clear, fragile vessel where you can see every single grain of sand dropping, entirely exposed, completely inevitable.
And you can't stop the sand.
You can't. Or, honestly, it feels like a transparent trap. There's this incredible irony to the whole setup. Julian is playing a transparent instrument in a transparent room.
He's making a statement.
Exactly. The whole message he is aggressively sending to the audience is, look at me, I have nothing to hide, there are no tricks up my sleeves, I am pure, unfiltered genius.
He wants the world to see entirely through him.
Yes, and yet, this exact transparency, this total visibility, makes the invisible nature of his murder so much more terrifying.
It is the magician's ultimate misdirection, but effectively reversed.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, usually a magician uses darkness, velvet curtains, hidden compartments to conceal the mechanics of the trick.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Smoke and mirrors.
But Julian's stage uses pure light and glass to scream at the audience, there is no trick here. Which means when the impossible inevitably happens, the human mind has nowhere to go but to the supernatural.
It breaks your brain a little bit.
It really does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the environment was explicitly weaponized against Julian's perception and the audience's logic.
Right. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. You have the acoustic power of a literal waterfall rushing beneath a glass floor under your feet.
Deafening.
You have a thunderstorm raging above you. The sheer volume of that environment is isolating him. It sets the stage for the most brutal, intimate violence imaginable.
It really does.
The aesthetic perfection of this venue, the polished glass, the glowing crystal, the pristine tuxedo, it stands in this stark, horrifying contrast to the ugly, visceral reality of how he actually dies.
And that transition from high art to brutal violence is instantaneous.
Blink and you miss it.
According to the broadcast footage and the witness reports, Julian is mid-crescendo. The music is building, his physical exertion is at its absolute peak.
Sweating, totally in the zone.
His hands are a blur over the keys. And then, abruptly, he stops.
He doesn't just miss a note. He drops the facade entirely. The medical sources describe him clutching his throat.
And not just a delicate cough.
No, it's wide-eyed, primal, air-starved terror. He collapses off the bench. And when the autopsy comes back, it confirms manual strangulation.
Which is just, it's so hard to wrap your head around.
But I want to pause here because manual strangulation isn't just a lack of air. It requires massive kinetic force.
Oh, yeah. It's violent.
The report shows crushed cartilage. There are clear, deep finger bruises, contusions that show the exact localized placement of fingertips pressing deep into the flesh of his neck.
And this is where we encounter the paradox the investigators dubbed the ghost grip.
The ghost grip?
Yes. The autopsy findings were highly specific, even alarming to the medical examiner.
What did they find?
The bruising perfectly matches a left-handed grip. but not just a standard human hand. It was a grip with a missing ring finger.
A missing ring finger.
Yeah. The bruising pattern showed the thumb on one side of the trachea, the index, middle, and pinky fingers on the other, with a distinct unbruised gap where the ring finger should have been applying pressure.
Okay, if you are listening to this, really let that sink in for a second. We have a physical imprint of a highly specific, maimed hand appearing on a man's neck.
Leaving catastrophic deep tissue damage.
Right. With zero physical assailant present on a stage bathed in light.
It demands rigorous critical thinking.
It really does.
How does a physical imprint of a deformed hand manifest without a physical presence to exert the force?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the human mind, especially when presented with that reversed magician's trick of total transparency, immediately wants to say, okay, we're dealing with a ghost.
Right. It's a demon. It's a supernatural entity.
But we have to actively push back on that. If the bruises are physical, the mechanism must be physical. Flesh was compressed, capillaries were shattered, cartilage was fractured.
That requires applied kinetic energy.
Yes, it requires a physical object interacting with his neck. If I walk outside and see a footprint in the mud, a foot or something shaped exactly like a foot had to press into the dirt.
Precisely. The laws of thermodynamics and biomechanics do not cease to exist just because you are inside the glass cathedral.
So when I first read this, my brain immediately went to something mechanical.
Like what?
Like, was it a drone? Did some micro drone drop from the ceiling, clamp onto his neck, and then fly off?
Ah, I see.
But the bruising doesn't support that. The spacing, the pressure gradients, it wasn't a mechanical uniform clamp. It was the specific imprint of a human hand.
It had the nuances of human fingers.
Exactly. So I started theorizing about an invisible cast. Something like a 3D printed weapon made of a clear polymer that mimics the exact pressure points of a maimed human hand.
That's a really solid theory.
But entirely mechanical in nature. Because otherwise, you were telling me an invisible phantom did it, and I'm just not buying that.
Your instinct to look for a physical analog to the human hand is absolutely correct. But the delivery system of that force is actually even more insidious than a 3D printed cast.
Oh, I know. It's insane.
But before we get to the actual mechanics of the weapon, we really have to address the psychological state of the victim in those final seconds.
The absolute, unadulterated terror. Because strangulation is not a quick death.
No, it's not like the movies where you just pass out instantly.
Right. It takes time, it takes seconds, sometimes minutes of agonizing struggle. Julian realized how he was dying.
He knew what was happening to him.
Imagine the psychological horror of that. He is sitting there in front of thousands of adoring fans. The cameras are recording every beat of sweat, and he feels hands, very specific, familiar hands closing around his throat.
He can't see them.
He can't reach up and peel the fingers back because there's nothing to grab. He is utterly helpless, suffocating in the middle of a massive crowd.
And to understand whose handprint was supposedly left on his neck.
The missing finger.
Yes. To understand the chilling significance of that missing ring finger and why Julian would have instantly recognized the grip, we actually have to leave the crime scene entirely.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the file.
We have to rewind the timeline by 20 years and look at the local lore that surrounded Julian Vane.
This is the part of the source material that genuinely made the hair on my arms stand up. The urban legend of the silent maestro.
Because apparently you can't have a modern musical genius without a deeply tragic ghost story attached to them, right?
It really does seem to be a cultural prerequisite.
It does. The sources detail a very persistent, very dark local legend. 20 years prior to this concert, Julian wasn't a solo act.
He had a partner.
He was part of a duo. He actually had a twin brother. And according to the whispers in the conservatories and the old instructors, the brother was actually the superior pianist.
A real deal.
He was the true, once-in-a-generation prodigy. Julian was good, sure, but his brother was transcendent.
But the brother isn't around anymore. The official record says he supposedly disappeared in a massive, horrific forest fire that burned down their family estate when they were teenagers.
Correct. But legends, especially in insular, highly competitive communities like classical music circles, have a way of mutating raw trauma into myth.
They spin it into a story.
Exactly. The locals say the brother's soul didn't leave the earth. They say it stayed in the music.
Ooh, chillin'.
The specific lore states that if a stolen song is played on a rainy night, the ghost of the twin brother emerges directly from the vibrating strings of the piano.
Emerges from the strings. That is just a terrifying Gothic visual. It reminds me of the hourglass again, the idea of the spirit sifting through the tiny, high-tension wires of the piano, just waiting for the right moment.
And the legend gets incredibly specific about his methods, too. The ghost doesn't use a spectral knife or a gun.
Right.
The legend claims he uses the very tension of the music itself to violently execute the thief.
Which is such a poetic, almost romantic interpretation of acoustic physics.
It is. The myth even goes so far as to claim that if you are in the hall and you listen closely enough beneath the melody, you can hear the ghost's irregular heartbeat in the rhythm of the rain hitting the glass roof.
It is pure Edgar Allan Poe. It's literally the telltale heart, but orchestrated for a multi-million-dollar symphony hall.
A perfect comparison.
But as investigators here, we have to look at this legend through a strictly forensic lens, because myths like this don't just spontaneously generate out of thin air.
No, they don't.
They are built on distorted scaffolding of truth.
Which raises an important question. What is the actual kernel of truth hidden inside this legend?
The finger.
Yes. The missing ring finger found in the ghost grip on the autopsy report is the smoking gun here. It's the physical proof irrevocably connecting this ethereal, spooky myth to the gritty, biological reality of the crime scene.
So what does it mean?
It suggests two distinct possibilities, and honestly, both of them are chilling. Either the twin brother actually survived that horrific forest fire all those years ago, losing his ring finger to the flames or falling debris, and has just been waiting in the shadows, orchestrating this for 2 decades.
Just biding his time.
Right.
Or, if the brother really is dead, whoever designed this murder weapon engineered the exact specific physical trauma of the dead brother into the device.
Which is so messed up.
They intentionally made a weapon that choked Julian with the precise dimensions of his dead brother's deformed hand. That is a level of psychological warfare that is just staggering to comprehend.
It's not just murder at that point, it's a message.
But I actually want to push back on something regarding Julian's character here.
Oh, go ahead. What stands out to you?
We're talking about this grand tragedy, and obviously Julian is the victim of a gruesome murder. But look at the implication of the legend and the history.
Okay.
Julian let his brother burn. Or at the very least, he used his brother's tragic death as a stepping stone to elevate himself.
He seized the opportunity.
Yeah, he took the unreleased music, he took the fame, he absorbed his brother's genius into his own brand, and he became the sole star.
The Mozart of the modern age.
Exactly. It's like a biological parasite that kills its host, but then wears the host's skin and keeps using the host's voice to sing to the crowd. Julian built this massive empire of crystal and glass entirely on top of his brother's ashes.
What's fascinating here is how society processes profound guilt and how individuals compartmentalize their own sins to survive their own ambition.
He had to have felt guilty on some level, right?
You'd think so. The physical environment of the glass cathedral was perfectly transparent, but Julian's soul, his history, was incredibly opaque.
Yeah.
This forces us to ask a difficult question. Does a guilty conscience, left to rot and fester over 20 years, effectively create ghosts?
Oh, wow.
Does the human mind, heavy with guilt, manifest its own punishment? Or on the flip side of that coin, do victims of profound, deep-seated trauma actually become ghosts in a sense?
Like they erase themselves.
Yes. Do they erase their own humanity, their own identity, to become a perfectly engineered, cold instrument of revenge?
Well, the sources actually give us a concrete answer to that philosophical question, because it wasn't a phantom. It wasn't a manifestation of guilt.
No, it was real.
It was a flesh and blood person with a terrifyingly brilliant, deeply disturbed mind who left a physical message. We have to talk about the confession in the strings.
Yes, we do. When the crime scene investigators finally moved in and began dismantling the stage, they found a crucial piece of evidence deliberately hidden deep inside the chassis of the piano.
Where was it exactly?
Tucked away under the internal lid, written directly into the margins of a piece of thick parchment sheet music, was a handwritten, tear-stained note.
And it wasn't just any piece of sheet music. The sources explicitly call it a stolen masterpiece.
It was the very song, the exact composition that Julian was playing the moment he died.
Okay, let's look at the exact text of this note, because the psychology here is incredibly dense. It reads, quote, "You told the world you heard the music in your dreams, but you only heard it because I played it for you through the wall of our shared cell."
That phrase, shared cell, is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It really is.
We need to analyze what that implies. Is this a literal prison? Were they incarcerated together in a juvenile facility or a psychiatric ward at some point before the fire?
Or is it a broader psychological metaphor?
Exactly.
Honestly, given the context of the twins, I lean heavily toward the metaphor. I think the shared cell is their twinhood itself.
Bitter connection.
Right. It's their childhood home, their shared bedroom. Imagine being a twin, sharing a womb, sharing a face, sharing a life, but one of you is the true, undeniable genius, and the other is just the face the world sees.
That would build so much resentment.
Right. Being trapped in a dynamic where your own brother consumes your identity and takes credit for your soul's work, that is absolutely a cell. You are a prisoner to your own reflection.
That interpretation aligns perfectly with the next highly accusatory line of the note. It says, "You took my hands, Julian. You took my name. And tonight, I'm taking your breath."
Man, that is dark.
It is, and it fundamentally transforms the entire nature of the crime. This isn't a simple revenge plot. It's not a primitive, "you hurt me, so I kill you" scenario.
It's much deeper than that.
This is an intellectual, highly calculated, and emotional reclamation of identity. The killer is stating that Julian stole the physical act of creation, the hands and the public persona, the name. By taking his breath, the killer is silencing the stolen voice.
And then comes the line that just knocked the wind out of me when I first read the file. The note says, people think the piano is an instrument of sound, but they forget it is a machine of tension and wires.
It's such a brilliant, chilling paradigm shift.
It really is. It fundamentally changes how you look at this elegant object sitting on the stage. It stops being a musical instrument, a vessel for art, and suddenly it looks like a medieval torture rack.
Just hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. We dress it up in polished mahogany, or in this case, crystal. We put it in cathedrals, but inside, it's just raw, brutal, kinetic violence waiting to be released.
It is an incredibly astute, mechanically accurate observation of what a piano actually is. A modern grand piano is not a gentle thing.
No, it's got crazy tension inside.
Exactly. It holds something like 20 to 30 tons of combined string tension across its cast iron plate.
Tons. Literally tons of pressure.
Yes. The physical forces at play inside that wooden or crystal box are immense. It is quite literally a dormant bomb of kinetic energy held in a delicate equilibrium.
And the note finishes by saying, I don't need to be on stage to reach your throat. I just need you to play the note of the damned. When the music stops, so does your lie.
Which brings us rapidly from the realm of poetic, psychological metaphor, crashing violently into the physical, engineering reality of how the piano became the murder weapon.
Right.
Because how do you translate 20 tons of internal string tension into a pair of invisible hands wrapped around a man's neck?
This is where we have to get into the absolute genius of the mechanics, the note of the damned. Because when the investigators finally took that custom crystal piano apart, what they found inside makes a James Bond villain's gadget look like a child's toy.
Oh, easily.
The level of sophistication is insane.
The forensic engineering report details the discovery of what they termed the invisible wire. And it wasn't standard piano wire.
What was it?
It was a microscopic, ultra-high-tension synthetic filament. The Materials Analysis Lab described it as a highly advanced form of liquid silk.
Liquid silk, which sounds incredibly beautiful, almost delicate, until you realize it is basically an imperceptible, weaponized razor wire.
Precisely. It's a synthetic polymer, likely military grade or custom engineered in a lab, designed to have the tensile strength of braided steel cable. But the visual profile and thinness of a spiderweb.
So you really couldn't see it.
It is virtually invisible to the naked eye, even under direct light. And this filament was painstakingly snaked through the piano's high-octave strings.
Which is brilliant camouflage if you think about it. If you look inside a piano, especially the high octaves, there are already dozens of highly reflective, incredibly thin metal wires tightly packed together.
Right, it blends right in.
Threading a microscopic filament through that is like hiding a needle in a stack of needles.
Exactly. But the truly diabolical part is how it was anchored and operated. From the strings, the filament was routed up, completely unseen under that glaring, blinding white spotlight into the intricate HVAC ventilation system directly above the stage.
Straight up into the ceiling.
Yes. But the propulsion system, the engine of this weapon, was the piano's internal mechanics itself.
Wait, the piano was the engine?
Yes. The wire was attached to specific internal hammers of the instrument. The entire mechanism functioned as a complex ratcheting mechanical pulley system. The piano's own action, the wooden hammers that strike the strings to create sound, was heavily modified to act as a winch.
Okay, I have to pause here because when we were talking earlier about how to apply physical force without a body, I said a drone.
Right, the 3D printed cast or a drone.
But this is so horrific, it's hard to fully process. Let's break down the mechanics of a piano hammer for a second. Normally, you press a key, a complex lever system called the whip-in pushes a jack, which throws the hammer up to strike the string, and then the hammer immediately falls back down so the string can vibrate.
Correct, that's the standard escapement mechanism. It's a momentary strike.
But the killer had to have altered that. Every time Julian hit a specific key, let's say the C sharp that the note implies was the note of the damned, the internal hammer would rise, but instead of just striking the string and falling away,
It engaged a micro ratchet.
yes, it wrapped a tiny, microscopic fraction of a millimeter of that liquid silk tighter around a concealed spool.
That is exactly the mechanism the forensics team reconstructed. It required custom gear ratios hidden inside the crystal chassis.
So every strike of that specific note pulled the wire infinitesimally tighter, locking it in place, unable to spool backward.
It's a one-way trip.
So the wire is already looped around his neck before he even walks on stage. Maybe it was resting lightly in the collar of his tuxedo, practically weightless. He wouldn't even notice it. He doesn't even feel it at first. But as he plays the stolen masterpiece, as he gets deeper into the performance and hits those specific C-sharp notes again and again, he is literally winding his own noose.
Every key press is a physical pull on the wire.
The hourglass isn't just dropping sand. Every grain of sand is tightening a vise.
He is independently generating the kinetic energy required for his own strangulation. The piano is simply storing and directing that energy.
It's suicide by proxy.
It really is.
The killer isn't actively choking him. The killer just built the machine and stepped away. Julian is the engine. Julian is the one applying the fatal pressure to his own trachea.
And what is so deeply, profoundly unsettling about this is the realization that if Julian had just stopped, if he had felt the tension on his neck, dropped his hands from the keyboard, and just walked away from the piano, he would have lived.
This raises an incredibly important question about the psychological profile of the victim and the killer's intimate, terrifying understanding of it. Did the killer know with absolute certainty that Julian's hubris, his ego, was so monumental that he would literally play himself to death?
I think so.
Yes. Absolutely yes. Because think about the situation he's in. He is Julian Vane, the Mozart of the modern age. He's playing his grand debut at the prestigious glass cathedral.
Millions of people are watching him live.
He feels a slight unnatural pressure on his neck. What is he going to do? Is he going to abruptly stop the performance, admit something is wrong, ruin his perfect, pristine aesthetic moment?
Not a chance.
No. His ego, or maybe his obsessive parasitic compulsion to finish the stolen masterpiece, forces him to keep hitting the keys.
He convinces himself it's just a muscle spasm or a tight collar.
He pushes through the discomfort, but then the discomfort becomes genuine pain. Then the pain becomes terror. But by the time he finally realizes the mechanical trap he is in, the tension on the wire is too great.
It's crushed his windpipe.
He can't breathe enough to cry out for help.
It is the ultimate intellectual and psychological battle, playing out in real time, hidden in plain sight. It's a clash between the killer's deep, cold, calculated trauma and Julian's desperate, pathetic need to maintain the optical illusion of his life.
Wow.
The killer weaponized Julian's perfectionism against him. The note of the damned wasn't just a physical, mechanical trap. It was a psychological one. Julian died because his pride simply wouldn't let him stop playing a lie.
It is brilliant. It is purely evil, but it is undeniably brilliant. But wait, let's play detective again, because there is a massive, glaring logistical roadblock here that we haven't addressed.
Yeah, the escape.
Yes. Okay, we understand the physics of the winch. We understand how the wire tightened with the gear ratios. We understand how he generated the kinetic energy to choke himself. But when the medical examiner and the police arrived on the stage, there was no wire around his neck.
Nothing there.
The room was locked down immediately. Security rushed the stage. There were high-definition cameras recording every square inch. If there was a physical high-tension wire connecting his neck to the piano and to the ventilation system in the ceiling, how did the killer remove the physical weapon from the room the moment Julian died without a single person seeing it happen?
And that is the final, masterful piece of the puzzle. The killer didn't just engineer a murder weapon. They engineered a self-destructing artifact.
The self-destructing artifact.
They created the perfect, invisible escape. To understand how they achieved it, we have to look away from the mechanics of the piano and look at the acoustic data recorded in the final milliseconds of the performance.
Right, the event the investigators called the resonant snap.
Yes. The audio logs detail a highly unusual acoustic event at the exact moment of Julian's death. According to the audience in the room and the broadcast audio fed to the world, Julian hit a final, heavy, low C-sharp on the piano, and then he immediately collapsed.
The audible music stops abruptly.
The audible music stops. But the forensic acoustic analysis, the visual spectrogram of the room's audio, showed something else entirely hidden beneath the audible spectrum.
What did it show?
At that precise fraction of a second, an immensely powerful, ultra-high frequency vibration swept through the concert hall. It was completely silent to the human ear because it was pitched far above our hearing range.
But it did something, right?
Oh, its physical impact was undeniable. It shattered every single crystal champagne glass in the VIP section simultaneously.
Okay, so as the detective here, I have to ask, what is the mechanical purpose of that? Why shatter the glasses? When I first read that, I thought it was just theatrics, the phantom making his presence known.
It wasn't theatrics at all. It was pure physics. It was an acoustic trigger.
An acoustic trigger.
The killer possessed a profound understanding of the resonant frequency of the concert hall, the crystal piano, the glassware, and most importantly, the liquid silk wire.
Okay, explain resonant frequency for a second, for those who might not know.
Sure. Every physical object in the universe has a natural frequency at which it vibrates. If you expose that object to an external sound wave that perfectly matches its natural frequency, the object absorbs that acoustic energy.
And what happens then?
The vibrations amplify exponentially until the molecular bonds of the object literally break apart. It's the classic trope of an opera singer shattering a wine glass with a sustained high note, but executed here with mathematical precision.
But weaponized, so they didn't care about the champagne glasses.
Not at all.
The glasses were just collateral damage to the actual target, the wire itself.
Precisely. The tension on the liquid silk wire was mathematically calculated down to the ounce. The killer knew exactly how many times Julian had to strike the note of the dam to engage the ratchet enough to tighten the wire to the point of lethal strangulation.
This is insane.
And they designed the winch system so that at that exact maximum threshold of tension, the liquid silk wire was primed, pulled as taut as a tightly plucked guitar string.
Oh my God. I see where this is going.
When Julian, in his final dying panic, struck that final, heavy, low C-sharp, the modified piano didn't just produce a musical note. It triggered an internal mechanism.
A secondary hammer.
Exactly. The forensics suggest a secondary hidden hammer struck a specialized microscopic crystal tuning fork hidden inside the chassis. This fork released the devastating, silent high-frequency waves.
And the wave hit the wire.
The wave hit the tightly wound liquid silk. Because the wire was at its absolute maximum tension around Julian's throat, the acoustic wave matched its resonant frequency perfectly.
The wire absorbed the acoustic energy.
Yes.
And it snapped, just like the champagne glasses in the VIP section.
It snapped instantly. The molecular structure of the polymer failed under the resonant vibration. And remember where the other end of the wire was anchored?
The HVAC ventilation system way up in the ceiling above the stage.
Yes. The investigators found that the ventilation system was rigged with a heavy, counterweighted spring mechanism, essentially a high-speed industrial retraction motor. The exact moment the tension of the neck snapped, that retraction system whipped the microscopic wire up into the dark vents at lightning speed. It vanished entirely in a fraction of a blink of an eye.
Before his body even hit the floor.
Yep.
Before the security guards could take a single step toward the stage. The murder weapon simply ceased to exist in the visible physical space. It is the ultimate magician's misdirection.
But done with acoustics.
Right. Think about it from the audience's perspective. Their ears are filled with this booming, tragic, unresolved, low C-sharp echoing through the hall. Their eyes are entirely glued to the horrifying sight of a dying man clawing at his own throat.
Complete sensory hijacking.
And while all of their senses are completely absorbed by the visceral horror of the moment, this invisible high-frequency wave is literally destroying and removing the physical evidence right in front of them.
If we connect this all back to the beginning, think of the sheer, terrifying genius required to pull this off.
It's mind-blowing.
The killer had to calculate the exact mechanical tension required to crush a human windpipe. They had to calculate the exact tensile strength of the liquid silk polymer before it snapped.
Right.
They had to map the complex acoustic frequency of the glass cathedral, explicitly factoring in the ambient broad-spectrum noise of the rain and the waterfall.
The masking effect.
Yes, they had to engineer a micro-ratchet inside a functioning piano action, and they had to time all of this perfectly flawlessly to the final inevitable notes of a stolen song.
It is breathtaking. In the most morbid way possible, it is a masterpiece of engineering. It perfectly fulfills the criteria of a locked-room mystery, but with a deeply tragic twist. The victim is the one who pulls the trigger.
Or, in this case, repeatedly presses the piano key.
Julian Vane died not because an invisible assassin snuck past layers of security with a garrote. He died because he simply couldn't stop playing a song that did not belong to him.
The brother, the Phantom Maestro, whatever name you want to assign to the architect of this trap, he didn't need a knife. He didn't need to be in the room.
He used Julian's own flaws.
He simply weaponized the very tension of the music, the immutable physics of the acoustic environment, and Julian's own boundless, blinding ambition against him.
It really is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. The Requiem of the rain-slicked keys. It makes you look at every performance, every grand stage, every flawless, aesthetic moment with just a little more suspicion about what mechanics are hiding beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over. We've spent this entire time talking about Julian Vane, acoustic engineering, and the extreme fatal consequences of his stolen identity.
The literal consequence.
But let's bring it back to our own reality.
The psychology of the performance is universal.
Exactly. We all have stolen songs in our lives. We all have our own crystal pianos.
That's a profound way to look at it.
Maybe it's not a literal symphony you stole from a sibling. Maybe it's an idea you quietly took credit for in a corporate meeting. Maybe it's a curated, entirely fabricated persona you adopt on social media that isn't really you, but, it gets you applause.
Right. The likes, the validation.
Or maybe it's a massive ambition, a career path, a lifestyle, a relationship that doesn't actually belong to your soul, but you adopted it because society or your family or your own ego demanded it.
And you just keep playing it.
And even though it exhausts you, you perform it anyway, day in and day out, for the crowd.
We all build our own glass cathedrals to hide in plain sight.
We absolutely do. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What lies are you continuing to play day after day, even as you can feel the tension slowly, imperceptibly wrapping around you?
Heavy.
Because you might think you're in total control of the instrument. You might think the applause means you're winning. But if you're playing a song that isn't truly yours, you might just be winding your own trap.
Wow.
And when the music finally starts, what is actually left of the real you?
A deeply haunting question to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the reality behind the performances you see every day. Keep looking for the strings, and we will catch you next time.